Good evening, I'm Alex Truth.
And I'm Maya Clarity. Welcome to Truth Report, where we follow the money, expose the powerful, and hold corporations accountable.
Tonight, we're bringing you 5 stories that reveal something deeply troubling about our global corporate landscape. From deepfake pornography profiteers hiding behind fake LinkedIn profiles, to geopolitical chess games over strategic ports, to corruption purges shaking the world's largest military.
We'll examine how Hong Kong's governing body is meeting less while claiming to do more, and we'll take you inside Brazil's unprecedented showdown with one of the world's richest men. These stories might seem disconnected, but stay with us. By the end of tonight's broadcast, you'll see the pattern.
Let's start with an investigation that should disturb every person watching. Bellingcat, the renowned open-source intelligence outlet, has published a devastating exposé identifying the man behind 2 of the internet's most harmful deepfake pornography websites.
His name is Mark Rezin. And according to Bellingcat's meticulous investigation, he was hiding in plain sight, presenting himself on LinkedIn as a marketing professional, claiming employment at Google, while simultaneously operating websites that allow users to create non-consensual intimate imagery of real people.
Let's be absolutely clear about what we're discussing here. These aren't websites hosting consensual adult content. These are platforms specifically designed to take photographs of real women, often pulled from their social media accounts, and use artificial intelligence to generate realistic fake pornographic images without their knowledge or consent.
The psychological devastation this causes to victims cannot be overstated. Imagine discovering that someone has created explicit sexual imagery of you, spread it across the internet, and there's virtually nothing you can do to stop it. This is digital sexual assault, and according to Bellingcat's reporting, Mark Rezin has been profiting from it.
What's particularly striking about this investigation is the methodology Bellingcat employed. They tracked Rezin through his own digital footprint, the same kind of trail that victims of his platforms cannot escape. His various social media profiles painted contradictory pictures, claiming simultaneous employment at a dental implant company, a human resources firm, and business software company.
The duplicity here is almost poetic. Here's a man who built platforms designed to exploit and manipulate images of women, and he himself was manipulating his own image across the internet to hide his true activities. According to Bellingcat's reporting, this wasn't carelessness, it was a deliberate attempt to obscure his involvement in an industry that generates revenue from human misery.
And let's talk about that revenue. These websites don't operate for free. They use subscription models, premium features, and advertising. Every dollar flowing into these platforms represents someone paying to victimize another human being. Mark Rezin, according to this investigation, positioned himself to profit from each transaction.
The legal landscape around deepfake pornography remains frustratingly inadequate. While some jurisdictions have begun passing laws specifically targeting non-consensual intimate imagery, enforcement remains inconsistent, and operators like Rezin have historically exploited jurisdictional gaps to continue their operations.
What Bellingcat has done here is use the same open-source intelligence techniques that have exposed war criminals and human rights abusers to unmask someone profiting from a different kind of violation. The message is clear: anonymity on the internet is increasingly an illusion, even for those who think they're clever enough to hide.
We should note that this investigation raises serious questions about platform accountability as well. How did Rezin maintain professional social media profiles, including apparently claiming Google employment, while operating these harmful websites? What verification systems failed? What corporate responsibility exists for the digital infrastructure these sites rely upon?
The victims of deepfake pornography are overwhelmingly women. According to multiple studies, over 90% of deepfake content online is non-consensual pornography, and the vast majority of victims are female. This isn't a gender-neutral technology problem, it's a weaponization of artificial intelligence against women.
And until investigations like Bellingcat's expose the humans behind these operations, the Mark Rezins of the world who profit while hiding behind screens, accountability will remain elusive. We'll be following this story as it develops.
Now we turn to a story with massive geopolitical implications. Hutchison Holdings, the Hong Kong-based conglomerate controlled by billionaire Li Ka-shing, is expected to continue divesting its global port operations despite a significant legal setback in Panama.
According to reporting from the South China Morning Post, Panama's Supreme Court recently nullified Hutchison's contract for 2 terminals at either end of the Panama Canal, one of the most strategically vital waterways on Earth. But experts say this ruling won't stop the broader sell-off.
Let's provide some context here. The Panama Canal handles approximately 6% of global maritime trade. Control over terminal operations at this choke point isn't just a business asset, it's a matter of national security for multiple nations. When Hutchison announced plans to sell these assets, it immediately drew attention from Washington and Beijing alike.
The timing of this Supreme Court ruling is fascinating. It comes as Hutchison was already in discussions to sell its port assets, potentially to buyers that would shift this strategic infrastructure away from a Hong Kong-based company with complex ties to mainland China. Panama's judiciary has effectively intervened in what was becoming an international geopolitical negotiation.
According to the South China Morning Post's reporting, experts believe Hutchison will still pursue selling its remaining port assets globally. But the Panama ruling introduces new complications. Any deal now faces potential scrutiny not just from Beijing and local authorities in various countries, but from legal systems that might follow Panama's precedent.
We need to examine who benefits from this situation. The United States government has made no secret of its concerns about Chinese-linked companies controlling strategic infrastructure worldwide. The Belt and Road Initiative has seen Chinese firms acquire stakes in ports across multiple continents, and American policymakers view this as a strategic vulnerability.
On the other hand, Beijing views attempts to force divestiture of these assets as part of a broader campaign to contain Chinese economic expansion. Li Ka-shing, despite being a Hong Kong billionaire, operates in a complicated space. His companies have significant mainland ties, yet he's previously drawn criticism from Beijing for moving capital out of China during economic uncertainty.
The Panama Canal specifically has been a flashpoint. Former U.S. President Trump repeatedly threatened to take back the canal, despite the U.S. having transferred sovereignty to Panama in 1999. This Supreme Court ruling could be seen as Panama asserting its own sovereignty over the canal's operations, independent of either American or Chinese pressure.
What we're watching unfold is infrastructure becoming the new battlefield of great power competition. Ports, telecommunications networks, semiconductor manufacturing, control over these assets is now as strategically significant as military positioning was in previous eras.
And caught in the middle are companies like CK Hutchison, whose business decisions are now subject to geopolitical calculations far beyond normal market forces. The message to multinational corporations is clear: strategic assets will be treated as matters of national interest, regardless of what the ownership papers say.
We'll continue monitoring this story as the global ports chess match continues.
Our third story tonight takes us inside the People's Liberation Army, where China's anti-corruption campaign has claimed another major figure and sparked a renewed propaganda push defending the ongoing purges.
According to South China Morning Post reporting, the PLA Daily, the official mouthpiece of China's military, has published 2 signed commentaries arguing that the anti-corruption drive will improve, not compromise, the military's fighting strength. These articles come in the wake of what's being described as Zhang Youxia's downfall.
For our viewers unfamiliar with the name, Zhang Youxia was until recently the vice chairman of China's Central Military Commission, essentially the second most powerful military figure in China, behind only Xi Jinping himself. His removal represents the highest-level military casualty of the anti-corruption campaign to date.
The PLA daily commentaries are remarkable for what they reveal about internal tensions. They caution against both unrealistic optimism and harmful pessimism about the anti-graft campaign. That language suggests significant debate within military circles about whether these purges are strengthening or weakening China's armed forces.
Let's examine this through a strategic lens. The People's Liberation Army has undergone an unprecedented anti-corruption campaign under Xi Jinping's leadership, with thousands of officers investigated and hundreds of generals removed. The official narrative is that this cleanses the force of corrupt elements. But critics argue it's also a mechanism for consolidating political control.
The timing matters enormously. China is engaged in an accelerating military modernization program, with particular focus on capabilities that might be used in a potential Taiwan contingency. The question intelligence analysts worldwide are asking is whether these purges are genuinely improving combat readiness or creating dysfunction through constant leadership turnover.
The PLA Daily's description of corruption as the #1 killer of battle effectiveness is notable. It suggests the official position is that corruption poses a greater threat to military capability than the disruption caused by investigating and removing officers. That's a significant claim that deserves scrutiny.
What we know from historical parallels is that military purges are double-edged swords. Stalin's purges of the Red Army in the late 1930s eliminated potential rivals but also devastated military leadership before World War II. Xi Jinping appears to be betting that his purges will produce a different outcome, a more loyal and more capable force.
The signal that the anti-corruption campaign will not end anytime soon is itself significant. It means no one in the PLA can consider themselves secure. That may prevent corruption through fear, but it may also prevent initiative-taking and risk acceptance that effective military operations require.
For observers trying to assess Chinese military capabilities, this creates significant analytical challenges. Is the PLA becoming more capable through reform, or more brittle through constant political pressure? The honest answer is that we don't know, and Chinese leadership may not fully know either.
What we can say with confidence is that Xi Jinping is prioritizing political loyalty alongside military capability. The removal of someone as senior as Zhang Youxia sends an unmistakable message: no one is too powerful to be taken down.
Our fourth story stays in the region but shifts our focus to governance in Hong Kong. The South China Morning Post has uncovered that the city's Executive Council, its top decision-making body, has held 25% fewer meetings under Chief Executive John Lee compared to previous administrations.
The Executive Council Secretariat's response to this finding is telling. Rather than defending the meeting reduction directly, they urged the public to focus on outcomes of the work rather than the number of gatherings. It's a classic bureaucratic deflection that deserves deeper examination.
Let's establish what the Executive Council actually is. It serves as the chief advisory body to Hong Kong's chief executive, roughly analogous to a cabinet in other systems. When this body meets less frequently, it raises legitimate questions about how governance decisions are being made and who has input.
The 25% reduction is substantial. We're talking about approximately 3.5 years of John Lee's tenure compared to equivalent periods under previous chief executives. The Secretariat invoked confidentiality principles to avoid direct comment on the trend, another deflection that raises more questions than it answers.
John Lee's administration has been marked by Hong Kong's continued political transformation following the implementation of the national security law. The city that once prided itself on distinct governance systems is increasingly integrated into mainland frameworks. This reduction in executive council meetings could reflect that transformation.
One interpretation is that fewer meetings indicate more efficient governance, decisions being made without lengthy deliberation. The outcomes not output framing the Secretariat deployed suggests this is how the administration wants the reduction understood.
But there's a less flattering interpretation. Fewer meetings could mean less consultation, less deliberation, and more centralized decision-making. In a system where executive power has expanded and legislative oversight has weakened, reduced council meetings might indicate governance becoming less consultative rather than more efficient.
The confidentiality invoked by the Secretariat prevents full analysis, which is itself problematic. Democratic governance typically involves transparency about decision-making processes. The inability to explain why fewer meetings are occurring, or to even confirm whether this is intentional policy or simply happened, suggests accountability gaps.
What's striking is that this story emerges from basic quantitative analysis. The South China Morning Post simply counted meetings. The fact that such simple scrutiny reveals a significant governance change that officials won't explain speaks to the opacity that has descended over Hong Kong's governing institutions.
For the millions of people living in Hong Kong, understanding how their city is governed matters enormously. The trust us posture embodied in appeals to outcomes rather than process is familiar from authoritarian governance worldwide. Hong Kong's evolution continues.
Our final story tonight takes us to Brazil, where Elon Musk learned a lesson about sovereignty, rule of law, and the limits of billionaire power. Brazil Wire has published a comprehensive analysis of how Musk started and lost a fight with Brazil's judiciary over his platform X.
The headline facts are striking enough. Brazil actually banned X, formerly Twitter, from operating in the country. One of the world's most widely used social media platforms was blocked in one of the world's largest democracies. And it happened because Elon Musk thought he could ignore Brazilian law.
According to Brazil Wire's reporting, this confrontation was not fundamentally about free speech, despite how Musk attempted to frame it. It was about whether a foreign billionaire would respect Brazilian sovereignty or attempt to impose his preferences on a nation of over 200 million people.
The context is crucial. Brazil's judiciary, specifically the Supreme Federal Tribunal, had been ordering social media platforms to remove accounts and content linked to what authorities described as anti-democratic activities, particularly those connected to supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro who participated in insurrection attempts.
Musk refused to comply with these court orders. He characterized them as censorship. He used his platform and personal account to criticize Brazilian judges personally. He closed X's office in Brazil rather than submit to local legal requirements. In essence, he bet that his wealth and the platform's popularity made him untouchable.
Brazil Wire's analysis describes Musk's meddling and incitement as rightly being viewed as a coup attempt. That's strong language, but it reflects how Brazilian authorities interpreted a foreign billionaire using his communications platform to support political movements that had literally attempted to storm government buildings.
The legal mechanics are worth understanding. Brazilian courts issued orders. X refused to comply. Courts imposed fines. X refused to pay. Brazil's telecommunications regulator then blocked the platform entirely. Within weeks, X capitulated, complying with the orders, paying fines, and resuming operations under Brazilian jurisdiction.
The outcome could not have been more humiliating for Musk. He had portrayed himself as a free speech absolutist standing against tyranny. He ended up demonstrating that even the world's richest man cannot simply ignore the laws of sovereign nations when he wants to do business there.
There's a broader principle at stake here. Social media platforms have become essential infrastructure for political communication worldwide. The companies that control them wield enormous power. The question of who regulates that power, the companies themselves, the countries where they operate, or no one at all, is one of the defining governance questions of our era.
Brazil answered that question clearly. Their answer is that Brazilian courts will determine what is legal in Brazil, and companies that want to operate in Brazil will comply with Brazilian law. Musk's attempt to substitute his own judgment for Brazilian sovereignty failed completely.
It's worth noting that this confrontation had an explicitly political dimension on Musk's side. His open support for Bolsonaro and figures associated with Brazil's far right, what Brazil Wire accurately describes as Brazilian fascists, was not subtle. He wasn't defending neutral principles of free expression, he was actively supporting one side of Brazil's political divide.
The precedent this sets matters beyond Brazil. Other countries watching this confrontation saw that standing firm against a billionaire platform owner is possible. Musk blinked. He could have withdrawn X from Brazil permanently and accepted losing access to one of his largest markets. Instead, he submitted to the rule of law he had previously mocked.
For our viewers, this story illustrates something important about power in the 21st century. Wealth provides enormous leverage, but it doesn't override sovereignty. A nation-state willing to enforce its laws still possesses authority that even the richest individual cannot simply purchase away.
Now, Alex, let's step back and look at what connects these 5 stories, because there is a thread running through all of them.
You're right, Maya. On the surface, we've covered deepfake pornography, port sales, military corruption, governance opacity, and social media bans. But the underlying theme is accountability: who has it, who escapes it, and what happens when it's finally imposed.
Mark Rezin thought he could hide behind fake LinkedIn profiles while profiting from the exploitation of women. Bellingcat's investigation demonstrates that anonymity is eroding. The tools of open-source intelligence that can track war criminals can also find the people profiting from digital sexual violence.
C.K. Hutchison thought it could navigate between Chinese and American interests while controlling strategic infrastructure. Panama's Supreme Court demonstrated that smaller nations are not simply chess pieces, they can assert their own sovereignty and disrupt the calculations of superpowers and corporations alike.
China's military leadership thought rank would provide protection. Zhang Youxia's downfall proves that in Xi Jinping's China, no one is beyond the reach of a system that prioritizes political loyalty above all else.
Hong Kong's Executive Council thought meeting less would go unnoticed. Simple scrutiny from journalists revealed a governance shift that authorities apparently cannot or will not explain. Transparency remains possible even where those in power prefer opacity.
And Elon Musk thought his billions made him untouchable. Brazil taught him otherwise. The lesson of our final story is perhaps the most important: wealth is not sovereignty, and companies are not nations.
What we're witnessing across these stories is a global contestation over accountability. Technology has created new ways to evade it: deepfakes, complex corporate structures, anonymous online operations. But technology has also created new tools for imposing it: open-source investigation, international journalism, digital trails that cannot be fully erased.
The powerful have always sought to escape consequences for their actions. What's new is the scale of power that individuals and corporations can accumulate, and the scale of harm they can inflict from that position. A single person can now create platforms that victimize millions. A single company can control infrastructure affecting global trade.
But what's also new is the capacity for exposure. Bellingcat doesn't have government resources, it has methodology and determination. Brasil Wire operates far from the corridors of global power, yet it documented a confrontation that revealed the limits of billionaire influence.
The stories we've covered tonight should make those who profit from exploitation, those who hide behind corporate complexity, and those who think their wealth places them above the law think carefully. The walls are closing in. Accountability may be delayed, but it is becoming harder to escape.
This has been Truth Report. I'm Alex Truth.
And I'm Maya Clarity. We'll keep following the money, exposing the powerful, and reporting what others won't.
Until next time, question everything, verify independently, and remember, those who tell you not to look are usually hiding something worth finding.
Good night.